Okay, moving on from the northeast over to Merseyside, Daniel. As it stands, what's the latest news on Liverpool's managerial situation? Because it still seems after a few weeks that Xabi Alonso is in the running for the job.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of Alonso's job to lose at this point. He's obviously just destroyed Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga title race with a 3-0 win. Just made his stock go up even higher. There's some talk Barcelona want him as well, but I think bearing in mind his connections to Liverpool and Real Madrid, I think Liverpool looks the most likely outcome for him. And there isn't many, other than De Zerbi, who again is also seemingly on Barcelona's radar, there doesn't seem to be much else other than Alonso to Liverpool right now.
Paul, what are your thoughts? Do you see Alonso going to Liverpool? Do you think maybe, I mean, Football Insider reported this morning that Ange Postecoglou doesn't have a release clause in his contract, albeit that he seems that he is set to stay in North London. Are you concerned at all that Ange could go? Are there any other names potentially that you think could be on the list?
Absolutely concerned that Ange would go, yeah. I mean, you look at the impact that he's had at Tottenham. And at the end of the day, Tottenham are not going to be in the Champions League next season, potentially, if they're not in the top four. If he gets them in the Champions League, then it's absolutely, I suspect he will stay. But if they're not in the Champions League and Liverpool come knocking, then, you know, we know the draw of the Champions League and that has the financial effect that it has as well. I would like to think from a Tottenham point of view that they will be in the Champions League next season and there's no decision for him to make. And the relationship that he's got with the Tottenham fans, the relationship that he's got, the way that he's brought the club together, it would be disastrous if he was to leave. But yeah, absolutely you're concerned because, you know, as soon as you get a successful manager, and you're going to get admiring glances from around Europe if you are not one of the top European teams. And that's always going to be a problem. But for me, I've said it before on the pod, I wouldn't want to be the next man in. I mean, the relationship that Jurgen Klopp's got with these supporters, that he's got with his football club, that he's done, and he could potentially walk away with numerous pieces of silverware this season. They're still competing on 4 fronts, let's not forget. So he could walk away from this club being one of the best managers that have ever tread the Anfield dugout, the respect, the relationship that he's got with the fans. For somebody to pick that baton up and carry it on is going to be one hell of a big task, regardless of who it is. And you look at the names that are linked, and yeah, Alonso is the one that jumps off the page at you. And then you question, is it too early? Is he too inexperienced? How would you get experience if you're not given the opportunity? He could be the absolute ideal candidate. I think the Liverpool squad are in a great position. I think they're a young side. I think he rejuvenated it. The signing of Szoboszlai in the summer was a great signing. And I think they've got a real opportunity of winning the league this season. I do if City falter. But where do you go? I mean, you look at the other names linked, De Zerbi. I mean, you know, we've seen other managers leave Brighton, haven't we? Pep Lijnders, his assistant, no real experience. Amorim at Sporting, Nagelsmann, Zidane, Emery. These are the names that are linked. And from a Liverpool fan's point of view, the absolute admiration that they've got for Jurgen Klopp, a lot of those names are going to really fall short, in all honesty, of expectation when it's announced. If one of those names that I mentioned, I suspect there's a lot of Liverpool fans that go, okay, let's see how that goes. Which, if it's not a big appointment like Alonso, you wouldn't want to be the next man in.
And Daniel, you've got experience, of course, after Sir Alex Ferguson left over the previous 10 seasons of some challenges that were faced when he did leave the club. Do you think actually, and again, same with Arsenal and Wenger, do you think actually Liverpool fans should be expecting sort of the same transition period? It might not be as long necessarily, but do you think that there could be some turmoil going into the dugout next year?
I think they have to expect a drop-off, whether it's a big enough drop-off to be compared to Man United or Arsenal at that period, I don't know. But you have to remember, it's not just Klopp that's leaving. It's his entire backroom staff. It's the director of football is leaving as well. The head of recruitment guy is leaving as well. So it's going to be an entirely new setup. And whoever walks into that, whether they're inexperienced like Xabi Alonso or they've won 3 Champions Leagues like Zidane, they're going to struggle with that environment because it's going to be new for everybody. Everybody's going to be dealing with new partnerships, new ways of thinking, new styles, new everything. So I think to expect the same results you've just had for the last 5-6 years, where when Klopp really took hold of that club and had his way, I think you're in dreamland, to be honest, because it's just not possible. I can't think of a situation where a top manager who had complete control left the club and it was all fine and dandy straight after. I can't think of an occasion. So I think it would be quite surprising if anyone but Alonso took over, but I think it's a massive gamble for Liverpool personally. I think he's done amazingly well at Leverkusen in the 18 months he's been there. But this is a different kettle of fish. The expectation is different. And the fans will love him immediately. So he then has an expectation of he has to play a certain way and he has to live up to the expectation of the fans from when he was a player. And that's never easy for any. I think we've seen a lot of club legends or ex-pros go back to their clubs and really struggle. And I think that's because they have that emotional attachment that sometimes can cloud their judgment, cloud their thinking.
Daniel, I don't think we can argue that. But my question back to you, though, is that, of course, they're undefeated this season. Like you said, they destroyed Bayern Munich. They're 5 points clear. Actually, in one sense, you could argue that Xabi Alonso is now under even more pressure to keep that run going in comparison to where they were at the beginning of the season.
This is it. And I was just about to say, I don't doubt that he's probably the best candidate just because he has that connection. And like you said, if Klopp is leaving, they need someone who's going to immediately connect, because Klopp's connection with the fans is, he might as well be from Liverpool. So for Alonso to come in, he's going to have that immediately straight away. And that's going to keep the fans on side for a lot longer than if, I don't know, for example, when was it Roy Hodgson came in to replace Kenny?
Yes, that's right.
Second time around, that was immediately, there was a disconnect between the fans and the players and the team. I think Alonso coming in does that. And I think he's probably the best candidate in terms of the way he plays football and the continuity. But it's still a huge gamble. And if he has a run of 5 or 6 games where things don't go to plan, not only will the fans start to question it because of a lack of experience, you think the media will jump on it as well because, oh my God, they're going to collapse without Klopp. And they've brought in the biggest prodigy in coaching and he's flopped. And is this the future? And it's all going to go pear-shaped. So it's a really big decision that the club have to make.
Are you predicting it or hoping from the Manchester United fans' point of view?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. Yeah, no, I just think I think he's the outstanding candidate, and I don't think anybody will doubt that. But there's huge question marks over it at the same time. But there's no one who you think, yes, that's the person to come in and everything's going to be great. There's no one, and I think that's the same for Barcelona. I think that's the same for Bayern Munich at the moment. If they get rid of Tuchel, it's the same for Man United. If they get rid of Ten Hag, it's a lot of gambles. Going to be this summer's going to be really crazy, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, if I could very briefly shed some light, I think you're right. I think there are some slim pickings. I think it's a difficult decision Liverpool have to make. My feeling is that I think Xabi Alonso is the best candidate. Daniel, I think you're absolutely right. We saw it with Wenger. We saw it with Sir Alex Ferguson, that disconnect with fans. Fans want someone who's going to walk in and know the dressing room. I mean, we saw it happen with, obviously, Arteta's doing really well. Lampard, it didn't work out at Chelsea. But I think there is that element going into next season. Liverpool fans aren't necessarily expecting huge things because it is a massive transition year. And most fans are looking forward to finishing off this season, like Paul was saying, competing on 4 fronts, seeing how many trophies you could potentially win, and then going from there, sort of rebuilding for next season. But
that's the other thing as well, isn't it? If Klopp goes and wins a treble this season, how do you follow that even more? If he goes and wins the Premier League this season and wins the Europa League and wins the FA Cup, then what?
Well, you put your feet up and revel in it, because I mean, I think the truth is
whoever's coming into that afterwards is in big trouble, because as soon as you don't win it, you've done worse. It's a big issue. That's
true, but and I think you're absolutely right, and I guess that can be said really whether it was Sir Alex Ferguson, Pep Guardiola, whenever he might leave Manchester City. The gaps that these monumental managers leave is huge, and it does make a really big difference. And I think, like when City go through that as well as Liverpool are doing now, it is a challenge. And fans, I think fans also, your expectation does change, and what you hope for is that you go into next season and you kind of give it your best shot. But we also don't know who it is going to be. It's not necessarily going to be Xabi Alonso. So it kind of just remains to be seen.
But it's a generational thing, isn't it? I mean, this generation, we associate Jurgen Klopp with Liverpool. You couldn't, when you think about it, you don't imagine Liverpool without him. Like Manchester City, you can't imagine anyone else sat in Manchester City dugout. And managers just seem to have a fit at a certain club. And those two have done, and they have done, in this generation of football. And it's going to be a big upheaval, whoever it is.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah.
It'll be interesting with the Liverpool board of how patient they are, because when Arteta went into Arsenal, obviously he struggled for the first 2 years or so, and there were big talk of he was going to go, and the fans didn't want him, and eventually he won people round by making these big decisions, and the board were patient. But if Liverpool are struggling at a point in a year's time or in 12 or in 15, 16 months' time, are they going to be as patient and allow whoever comes in, whether it's Alonso or someone else, or are they going to hit a panic button and go for someone else? That will be a big thing as well of to how they replace him, because there's no short-term option to just come in and start winning. I don't think that's a thing, especially with Man City. Even with Klopp, they've struggled to win a lot. So yes, they've had success, but this is still a Man City era, and seeing that when Klopp is gone is going to be even harder to envision Liverpool coming in and competing. So it's going to be really difficult for whoever goes in.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.